We're live.
We are live indeed. Friday morning creator stream is back, extremely back. I know we've got members of the Monad community joining, other creators as well. Thrilled to bring on a special guest for the first time on this stream. Ben, welcome to the stream. Thank you very much for joining us. Really excited to learn a lot today.
Excited to be here. Excited to dive in.
Yeah. So Ben is a educational YouTuber and strategist with over 140,000 subscribers and responsible for more than 150 million views. He's worked in the creative space for over 5 years, starting with marketing and video production for local businesses, and has helped generate multiple 7 figures in revenue for creative partners. He's led a finance channel's creative team scaling from 250,000 subscribers to 1.8 million subscribers, and has generated billions of impressions. So we're excited to talk to you.
Super stoked. Can't wait.
That's quite the resume. I'm pretty blown away to hear that in succession. I don't know if Jessup has a natural starting point to pick up on here, but I guess to front run Jessup would be interesting to hear, Ben. Like, where did you get started? Like, what was the impetus to start getting into the marketing side of things? Obviously, at this point you've amassed a huge resume, and that's probably pretty daunting for someone who's maybe thinking about being a creator, or just kind of exploring a bit with maybe TikTok or Instagram, YouTube as well. But would be curious to hear how you got started.
Yeah. I mean, it started a long time ago. Pretty much as long as I can remember, I've been like making videos, right? Like since I was a kid, but more as like a career, more seriously. Had so much time during the lockdowns, other creators I know of. So started exploring the algorithms, kind of seeing what worked, how to engage the audiences. And I realized that at the time, what I really loved was video editing, storytelling, like how to put together this message and make it clear, make it concise, especially for educational videos, how to make it as simple as possible to understand. So got into video editing back in 2021. It's kind of my like into the industry. And became like a strategist, creative director for one channel, grew from there. Obviously, like hearing those numbers back on the day-to-day, don't really even think about that. It's just like slow progression. So it's just as crazy to hear that and look back on everything. But yeah, really, it's been a slow process, growing piece by piece over the last 5 to 10 years, learning what people really care about. And specifically in the educational space, like how do you actually get someone to understand more advanced info in the most beginner way possible? How do you give the widest possible audience the ability to understand these very cool concepts? So that's like what I've been obsessed over for the last year. Worked with all kinds of channels inside the finance space, outside the finance space. So really that's been the pipeline: editing, strategy, and now just trying to see how to spread the messages as far as possible.
It seems like there might be a slight delay, Ben, on your side. The chat is saying there's a delay. Are you guys seeing it, Danny?
A little bit, but it wouldn't be a pipeline stream if we didn't have some minor technical difficulties. So yeah, I'm not too worried about it.
Let's see if I can make a swap here. Whoops, that's not it. There we go.
So what are you working on now? Like, what is your main? Are you kind of all in on your channel? Are you working for other channels? What are you? What is your kind of bread and butter right now?
Yeah, like 50-50. Working on my own channel, which is just a lot more general education, learning about industries around the world, and investigative kind of videos. That's one half. It's the half that's gotten a lot less love lately. The other half is like helping educational channels to scale their channels, scale their brands, their viewership, but also convert that to business revenue, to product sales, stuff like that.
I think that's one of like the really, I mean, maybe it's just relatable for me, but I think that's like a really challenging area to be creating content in. I think, you know, Jessup and Savant can definitely relate here, but you know, when you're creating for yourself and like trying to essentially make art, you're worried about like telling your own story and, you know, just like doing your own thing. You're less worried about imparting a message or educating an audience. But when you're representing a company or a brand or a technology, for example, it becomes like, you know, more challenging, I think, because you're really trying to like educate, and you're trying to find a way to package that message in a way that's accessible and exciting to an audience. And I'm curious about how you think about, you know, growth for a channel when you are, for all intents and purposes, boxed in around a certain topic.
Yeah, I mean, I think my philosophy has shifted a lot. Obviously, there's creators out there who are really capitalizing on getting as many views as possible. I'm not so sure that that's necessarily the way it has to be anymore, because there's so many stories out there of, I mean, like specifically in the finance, business, education space, there's creators out there who are like taking 1,000 views and turning that into $250,000 a month in revenue. Super hyper focused niche. They're just talking specifically to that audience. And I think right now, really, there's a lot more of my own focus going towards impact, and how can you, like, beyond just share the information, how can you genuinely make a difference with that view? How can you target that audience a lot more specifically? So I've seen so much lately that smaller reach is far more important, but I think there is balance too, balancing the art, like where you want to share that passion and you want to share that message with the world, but also there is, like, for business sense, are those views, I don't think it needs to be as big. You don't need to get 1 million views to make a difference with that. Just targeting the right audience really is the difference maker.
What is your process when picking specific topics? Are you like finding things that are going to have cultural relevance, or that you finding things that you find like, I'm really interested in this particular topic, I want to investigate this? Is there a balance? What does your process kind of look like with that?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like for my own content, it's a little different. Every single day I have a notebook in front of me. I try to think of 10 different things I could talk about, 10 different like video titles, industries, whatever it is, and see how much depth there is there to really investigate. Because like when I'm thinking about, like, I don't know, understanding for a video how the lottery industry makes money and how things like that, a lot more niche. So it's like totally different process from working with other channels where really we're trying to find things that have worked before and pivot it towards the niche. See what about that video did well. Specifically, like a trend that could be popular now. Is there relevance there that you could talk about it within your own realm of expertise? So I think there's a lot of different processes, but for the most part, I think in general, I don't like to create things without seeing some sort of interest from the audience already. It's a huge gamble. Like at least one video that's done well before on a topic, that's enough. But Yeah, I think that's a big piece of it too. Just seeing what works, what audiences are already looking for, and then adding that extra spice on top of it.
Yeah. So you mentioned earlier that you started as a video editor, and like as a niche like industry that we're in, there are a lot of us that are still doing video editing, and I would like to know like what was your like transitioning from video editor to content creator facing to the camera like? Was it hard for you? And like how did you find the proper balance that you can still be creative and at the same time, you know, just keep on doing what you like while still building out for a company or something?
Yeah, I think that's actually a great question. Something I haven't really thought a lot about. I think there's part of it that I just like talking too much, maybe. But I think the biggest thing was that when I first started making videos, specifically for my own channel, I was making videos about editing, just like talking about the things I learned because it was the most natural progression. I'm doing these things every day. I want to help people to do them faster, to learn what I'm doing, because my processes, I was like so systems driven when I was editing all the time. It's like, I want this to be fast. It's like, I don't think there's a world where editing isn't a little bit of like a slog, for lack of a better term. Just like, it's a little bit rough sometimes, just sitting behind the computer, cutting clips. So I think for me at that point, it was like sharing things to make it faster, to make it easier and more fun, but also it was like an outlet to have that community beyond just like sitting behind the computer. So that was a big piece of what I was doing. So I think there's that, but also just generally the creative like elements of designing thumbnails, thinking about strategy. I've always liked that side too. And it was just like a way to flex that muscle when there was a lot of focus on the editing.
I thought it was really interesting how you said you kind of like, you look for some sort of precedent when you're making content. Like, is there already an audience that is interested in this subject or this format? And that makes a lot of sense when creating something from scratch. However, I think a lot of people, especially nowadays with the tools that are available, are starting their like creator's journey by clipping others' content. Maybe it's a podcast, maybe it's a live stream like this, and you have kind of less creative control over the content itself, but you're trying to grab out these sound bites, these moments, and package them in a way that's really compelling for kind of that audience that already exists. And I'm curious if you have any tips. I know we've got a bunch of creators and clippers and editors in the audience who would probably really appreciate kind of a brief rundown on your process when content already exists. How do you go and create shorts from that content or derivative content that ultimately maximizes the value of that original piece?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, such a good question. My biggest thought is with long form videos, specifically on YouTube, is that they're like investments, right? And I think too often you like put out a video, you move on to the next thing, right? Especially for longer videos, like pushing 30, 40 minutes. To me, seeing short form content like clips, those ultimately can funnel into those longer pieces. I think the way I view shorts from an audience building perspective, specifically for businesses or like even entrepreneurs who are creating content, that it is an on-ramp for them to get to know you, learn more about you, whether it's a podcast clip or interview, live stream, anything, or something a bit more in depth where you're like editing a short, putting together something a little bit higher production. Does it have that next step? What is that next step? I think that is something that, I mean, personally, I've overlooked a lot, where I put out this content, it gets sometimes millions of views, and then I don't really know what that next step is for the audience, right? So to me, thinking of each of those, the long form YouTube videos is like the investments into the channel, things that can be watched for 2, 3, 4 years sometimes if you target that video properly with packaging. To me, those shorts just keep it fresh. It's like the marketing. When you put out a movie, you have short form content, you have ads on TV, all sorts of different things. And to me, that's sort of the function of it there. Get them to hear about you, plant that seed, get them curious, and then they see more, they learn more, and that's where that value really comes, I think.
Totally makes sense. And I really like the movie analogy, I guess, here, because a movie, call it hour and a half, 2 hours, you could clip a lot of 60-second segments from a movie that are not going to get anyone to watch that movie, right? Like there's a lot of scenes and shots and things that happen in long form content that don't actually help sell interest in that content itself. Like that's why trailers compile all these action packed, interesting cliffhanger type moments. So yeah, I really like that analogy because, you know, as we see more and more clippers coming online, basically, like I think that's a really good frame of reference to have. Like if you are going to take 3 clips from an hour-long podcast or a long-form YouTube video, they should be the best 3 clips in that video, I would say. And you want to start with probably the most interesting 2 or 3 seconds you can possibly find.
100%. I think thinking about that, it's like there is a ton of moments, especially in YouTube videos. Like when we're talking highly educational guide type videos on YouTube, there's a lot of moments where it's like you're in the depths. It's not super engaging. It's really hard for someone with that broad audience to someone in that broad audience, to understand what's going on. So another way I like to think of it too, if I'm going to be creating new content that's sort of designed to funnel towards that video or to something like that, it's like, what is the most unique and interesting element, and can I build it out even more and like expand on that? Take what could be a clip and make that brand new content. So I think a lot of the time, having seen, I mean, I see content too. I think one of the things that stands out to me is when there's just direct clips, direct pull from like a podcast or interview, and it's just kind of missing the context of like what actually started this conversation. What is like the hooking element that gets me interested and gets me to follow? So I think beyond even just taking the best 2 to 3 elements is like even doubling down on it. Is there another way you can get me engaged or add value beyond what's already there? Just take that, film a little bit of an extra like 15 seconds on top of it, take it to that next level. I think that's when it gets like really, really good too.
Or even like I've seen people just like adding the text of like something simple as like, I can't believe Theo Von said this to the Rizzler. And now you're like already gonna pay attention, and you might not even need the what was leading up to that, but at the very least that was the hook in text right on the clip. Is like, okay, well now I'm interested in what Theo Von said to the Rizzler.
100%. The hooks can be so simple too. Just get me interested and I'm there.
Yeah. So there's a question in the chat, and then something I'm curious. What AI tools, if any, that you're using, and let's just start there. It's like, what are you using AI tools wise? Are you using any AI tools for clipping? Are you using it for thumbnails? Are you like, how much of your process is it?
It's definitely been huge integration into the workflow. I think the biggest one, obviously, ChatGPT, like all the time for all sorts of different things, but not in the sense of like trying to get it to write for me. Like mocking up thumbnail concepts for YouTube video is one of the biggest things that I found ChatGPT to be useful for, where I have like 3 reference thumbnails. I want to try something like this with elements of this, but I want my face. Just give me like a quick mock-up. That's one of the big ones. There's other tools for that too, but I don't know, maybe I just like the simplicity of having it all in one place. So that, like thumbnail mockups for outlining videos, specifically getting feedback on videos. It's like if it's been trained on a lot of different like data, a lot of different sources, it'll also have perspectives from those sources to see how people would interpret the content I'm writing. And beyond that, I mean, there's other tools like Opus Clip that I use for long form videos, cut it down to short form, but often I'll add some additional editing on top of that. And then I have experimented with other things like I don't know if 1 of 10 is necessarily an AI tool, but I'm pretty sure it uses AI to determine what's going to do well.
So you have been using
it takes
1 of 10?
outliers. I have been using it off and on. I feel like within the niche that niches I've been in, there hasn't been as much that's changed. So there's not really any new like outlier content, which is basically like super high view compared to like general audience, like stands out from the typical audience that would watch the video.
Yeah.
There's not as many of those. So I find I use it off and on just to see what's happening and come back to it, but not all the time.
Have you played around with Mr. Beast's, is it view stats?
Oh yeah, that too. There's honestly like, it's always on the background, so I don't even think about it, but I use that all the time because it shows you how the video is performing compared to average videos. Gives you a lot of insights into the video, but it's just always on my sidebar, so I don't even think about it. But
what metrics are you particularly looking at to decide whether or not something is successful or to adjust?
For content that's been posted or things?
I would say for content that's been posted, but also interested in, I guess, in analyzing other ones too.
Yeah. I'd say biggest one is, I don't know. It's kind of like, it's not a super objective metric, but just audience reception to me is the biggest one. If I'm seeing comments of people asking follow-up questions and saying like, I tried this, it worked, it was helpful. Like to me, that's an initial signal that it's doing something. Because when you put out the video the first 8 hours, you don't have enough data to know whether it's good, to know whether it's going to reach a wide audience. But if you see the audience that watches every video is finding this super engaging, chances are algorithm's going to push it to more people like that. But to get like more specific, there's the big ones like retention. I like to look at the charts to see what points people are dropping off at with YouTube content and short form content. I think that's more valuable than just a percentage. People watch 37% of the video. That doesn't really mean a whole lot to me. Whereas if you see a chart and you can see like this point right here, you lost 10% of the audience, watch that back, understand why. So audience reception, retention, and then for thumbnails, really just looking at click-through rate, seeing how many people are coming through early on. Ideally, you want to see that close to like 10% click-through rate, or as close to 10% as you can get, because it means that core audience is really engaged, people who watch every video, and then onwards, like 5% click-through rate is good for YouTube content. With that in mind, though, short form, totally different. Typically, just look at the retention chart, see what people engaged with, what they didn't. Beyond that, I don't know that there's really as many reliable metrics to pull from.
I'm personally interested if you, because I know you've consulted and worked with like some financial channels, plenty of educational channels. I'm curious how you kind of think about approaching in maybe an abstract concept or working with a business that, you know, the core kind of consumer audience doesn't really care so much about what that business is doing. I think like a good example would be like internet infrastructure, for example. Like if you were consulting with Google Cloud or AWS and that's your brand, like how do you think about creating content that makes that brand inviting for a large audience, even if, you know, they're not your immediate consumer?
That is a great question. I mean, that is like probably one of the harder ones, I'd say, where it's like there's nothing tangible there. The way I like to think about it, though, kind of backing up a little bit with any business, is just trying to identify pain points, problems, solutions that your business is offering, right? For internet infrastructure, I think that's probably something that gets overlooked a lot. So it might be a little bit tougher to get people to care about the problems. But I'd say that like the biggest thing is like showing integrations, or even case studies can be super valuable for something like that. Having worked with like smaller channels from entrepreneurs in various different niches, the same sort of thing applies, like case studies showing how their clients have been able to make money or get results or whatever it is, but baking in the principles that got them there in between, like a talking head, just while I'm explaining the results, talking with my client and sharing their story of how they grew on YouTube, for example, I'd be telling the audience about the principles, what they mean, why this video did well. And that goes beyond. So I'd say, kind of coming back to that example, taking on that challenge, I'd say like specifically showing like, even if there's businesses that around like 20 years ago, showing the differences in efficiency by like having internet infrastructure and like being able to use the cloud. You got people in different offices, like working a lot faster. And then if you're explaining on the back end, you don't have to go super technical, like what that means. I think way better to think, I like to think specifically widest audience. Like if we think about US audiences, how can I get the most beginner person to this concept to understand? But worldwide audiences, how can I use the most basic language? How can I use the most basic terminology and explain what I'm doing in a way people would care about? And I think if you really latch onto the problem, it makes it so much easier because you can just use like very practical terms. This is solving this problem. This is how we do it. Like step 1, step 2, step 3, use an analogy in there. And I think case studies frame that pretty well. But for a lot of businesses, I will say like, people do care about the behind the scenes. I think if you can still add that value, or even just like educational content, I think educational content is so valuable because for businesses, you're already providing value. You're already like providing outsized value. You're giving free content on YouTube, free content, TikTok, Instagram, wherever it is, so that when it comes time that they're actually interested in the product, you've already delivered a ton of value to them for free online, and they already understand what's happening. They already know how it's going to solve their problems. So I think it like starts step 1 of the sales process too. So, yeah.
Do you think there's a balance of like, all right, we're going to create content that is algorithm friendly, has entertainment value, has the ability to have virality, as well as then the other side where it's like purely educational and, you know, has depth. But I'm just wondering if like there is value in creating something that has virality that then can spill over, that like that's your billboard, that's your top of the funnel that is bringing in the people that are gonna.
Yeah, I think I'd like to think of it specifically, like I mentioned, shorts are like top of funnel. I think of like there's almost different brackets of long form content. So the more like wide-ranging audience videos, I like to consider those like the audience builder videos. They're not going to go into as much depth, but like a case study is a great example of that. You're just showing simple problem solution, giving some like basic principles, get people interested, get them hooked. And those can be very wide-ranging audience, like hit the algorithm type videos. Whereas something that's like how-to guide videos, those are like very evergreen search-based, like core audience videos. So, I mean, they both have their purposes. They can both reach the same level of audiences, to be honest. It's just how quickly and whether you're like capitalizing on a trend, that the here and now versus something that's going to be valuable over the next 5 years for people to search up and get that value. I do like to think about like algorithm and performance for even those videos. So I think it's valuable, but I guess like my biggest realization in the last year is less thinking about the algorithm and more so how the algorithm works. Specifically for YouTube, as I understand it, that is like, I mean, it's been trained on how to recommend videos and adjusted. A lot of YouTube engineers don't even really know how it works very well, but it's basically just taking audience profiles. Like if I watch 5 channels and I'm like interested in different topics, I like tend to engage more with finance content and I engage less with the like challenge, super entertainment content. There's probably people out there like me. The algorithm will find people like me, similar interests, similar channels that they watch, and like link between the two. If I liked it, will person B like it? If person B doesn't like it, let's go another direction, find person C. It's just like trying to search. So if you have a video that's ever underperforming, by the way, you can kind of see this happening if you look at click-through rate charts, because you'll see these huge spikes where it's like 75% of people who saw this, they loved it. And then the next day, no one clicks it. The algorithm's just trying to see who is actually like caring about the video, who's going to watch more. And so to that point, to kind of wrap up this little point here, the algorithm, I like to think of it as the audience. Like, who is that audience? What are their interests? Like, what are they going to pay attention to? And what do they care about right now? What's going to get them to click that video right now instead of in 2 to 3 years when it's relevant?
It's interesting. We had a call with somebody from YouTube, and one of the things that they were mentioning was like a lot of creators think that the algorithm is trying to find audience for their video, but that's not what it's doing. It's trying to find a video that the audience wants to watch. So it's not caring about you as a creator, it's caring about the viewer. So the viewer is what it's prioritizing. It's not like, hey, it's searching for an audience for you. So it's really important to identify your audience ahead of time, so then that way you can understand that like the algorithm is going to work for the viewer. It's doing the work for the viewer to find the videos that they want to watch and that they're most likely to watch, not the opposite, where it's like, hey, I'm going to put a video out on YouTube and then the algorithm is going to do the work for me to find the audience.
Yeah, I think like it's always been something that I've always been so curious about. It's like, how do I get people to care? And I think that's really what it is. The algorithm, like I've heard, having worked with tons of creators, I've been part of like creator groups where there's like a lot of smaller creators. Like 5-6 years ago, I was in different groups and we were trying to figure out how to game the algorithm. But ultimately, like reflecting back on it, there isn't really an algorithm. There's a person watching a video and the algorithm just wants them to watch for as long as possible. They want them to not go to Netflix. How long can you keep them from going to Netflix? So it's like engage that audience.
Yes, that's where we met, was in a YouTube group.
Yeah, it was one of those.
I mean, speaking of like creator networks, one topic that's interesting, I think, is UGC exploding in popularity. Obviously, many businesses looking to leverage that. I think probably the most well-known example is Steak.com, just taking every viral meme and then watermarking that on basically every platform under the sun. And I think like at this point in time, UGC is super attractive to businesses because for a relatively low spend, you can go out and basically farm millions, if not tens of millions of impressions, provided you're working with the right creators and have the right strategy. And I think that last part is obviously very important, and it's obviously easier said than done. So curious if you've seen any really strong approaches from businesses on the UGC side of things, how to best activate creators and also determine who the right creators are to go ahead and activate.
Yeah. I don't know of any examples specifically. I think like there's so many though, that having seen a lot of UGC content across like different platforms, my general takeaway is that like ultimately creators are going to shift their content and they're going to have like a lot of different topics that they're talking about. So it's really valuable to thinking more about like the Steak.com example where they're like on these streams and they're just like kind of farming the streams with that logo. Is there relevance in that creator? Like, are they going to be relevant to the brand for a long enough period of time? There's obviously brand risks. You never know what a creator is going to do, I guess. Like what they're going to say, you want to make sure it does line up. But thinking more like generally, I'd say when it comes to UGC content, it makes sense that it is what's doing well and what brands are shifting towards, because we have a much easier time trusting people when there's like tons of different high production ads. It's almost like a friend effect, right? Like if a friend recommends that I go check out this product, like change their life, I'm going to go check out that product. Like running shoes. I bought running shoes because someone recommended me running shoes, right? Like I've heard of this brand. They liked them. I bought them. It was pretty easy. It's the same sort of thing with UGC, whereas like high production ads, spending millions and millions on production, it's like a lot of investment for people to pay attention to it for a short period of time. Like I've been in video production for marketing for businesses, like local businesses, trying to like find ways to like expand their clients, like get new leads coming in. And the biggest thing is like personality. So I think UGC achieves that. And to the point for brands, who are the people who are the most likely to convert for your brand? Is it someone who's making general content, like the Mr. Beasts of the world, who have a lot of knowledge, but do they have a lot of depth? I know very little about Mr. Beast as a person. I know a lot about his content. So I think if you can get people with a lot of personality who can engage their audiences and get them to care, they have that friend pull like you would get in real life. That's where it's going to be most successful.
So which running shoes did you buy?
The On Cloud Monsters. So good. Worth every penny.
So we have some questions originally that were submitted on a Google form. I'm going to ask a few of these, and then there are some questions in the chat as well. This question is from Vikru. What helps you not be shy in front of a camera? And second question, how to choose your niche in video content?
I actually love the first part of this question. I love both parts of the question, but the first one is something I think gets overlooked a lot. Because like looking back at older videos from any creator, there's always like a difference between then and now, right? When I look at my own videos from 2022, 3 years ago, when I first like really took YouTube seriously, I was so confident in front of the camera. I thought in reality, I was just like broadcasting my voice in very weird ways. I think the biggest thing for being comfortable on camera is just remembering that there's people watching, if that helps. For some people, that's worse. So take this with a grain of salt. And trying to think of talking to people. I also would say, like, if you're scripting out videos, read them out loud. That was one of the biggest things I ran into, is that I write very differently than I speak. I also speak a lot faster. So I'd be writing these long words and it just doesn't make sense. So if you read out loud as you're writing and like kind of refine from there, it makes it easier to actually deliver the words. You're not thinking about that. And then you can focus on just trying to be natural. And the easiest way I've found, this is like the most ridiculous thing to do before calls, even I do it all the time. It's just like literally shaking out your body like as much as you can. Just like, I don't know what it activates, but I just feel more natural, because if I'm sitting on camera like this, just like stiff, staring straight ahead of me, it's not, you don't get the same like voice flow. It doesn't feel the same for the viewers. Whereas when you're like shaking out, feel like really loose, almost like before you work out at the gym, like do a little bit of a stretch, get the same sort of thing. Get a little bit of a warm up. I feel like it makes it more natural. Like I'll speak with my hands, have a little bit more like natural feel. And for picking niche, this is definitely like the toughest one. Because the smaller your focus is, really the wider you can reach. You want to start with one audience group, one person really you're talking to, and expand from there. But I'd say for niche, like write out the things you're interested in. What content do you actually watch? Like literally write out a list. If there's like 10 different things that you're interested in, get them all down. Then start looking at content within the niche. Is there a lot of videos on the topic? Are the videos doing well? Is there ROI in committing to that niche really? And if you can weigh like potential results against like your interest or your passion for the topic, and there's a high level of both, say that's really solid. And if there's still a tie, third thing I'd recommend doing is think about longevity. Like if you're going into a niche, is there business opportunity? Is there brands that could sponsor videos? Is there like products you could sell to your audience down the line? Like, can you build something out of it? So like ROI, interest, potential for business down the line. I think that's like best way to pick a niche. But you do have to have that interest really initially, I'd say.
Yeah.
Cool.
Like just a side comment, like I can totally relate on the shaking of the body before, because like there was a time like 5 years ago where I was performing in theater or even dancing in front of crowds. And I think there's a relation to what you're doing before like recording a video that you're performing. And it's not like, I remember Danny saying that you should be presenting 10% more of yourself. Like you're not at the baseline level like this, I feel like. So yeah, just a side comment on that part.
One more time on the jazz hands.
Yeah.
I mean, one kind of, I guess, interesting lesson for myself was starting the Pipeline podcast almost 2 years ago at this point. When I started the podcast, I had been going to business conferences for probably 2 years prior to that. And I was very familiar with just walking up to someone, having a conversation, learning what their business was, and having no idea prior, what this person did, having no like upfront knowledge as to like what this business was. And then, starting the podcast, I would be having similar conversations, but on camera. And all of a sudden I was really worried about, well, what if I don't understand this business? How am I going to ask a follow-up question? And I pretty quickly, not as quickly as I would have hoped, but pretty quickly realized that hosting a podcast was actually very similar to having these conversations with business owners and founders at a conference, where it's really just about pulling that information out of the person you're talking to. And it doesn't really matter if I'm a subject matter expert in what their business is, what their business does, etc.
Literally one of the biggest lessons for creating that I've ever had, it's 100% in that, is that people don't necessarily want the subject matter experts, the people who have studied everything. We can connect so much more with someone who's like just 2 steps ahead of us. Like you've done your research, you know what you're talking about, you know a little bit about the industry. But like even for educational content, like you don't have to be a pro. I think that's such a huge barrier for people starting. It's like this niche is perfect for me, but I don't know anything about it. So all it takes is just that first step. Can you explain it the way the beginners need to learn it? And you're a beginner, so you know what they need to hear. It makes it so much easier.
I think that's why people resonate so much with Joe Rogan, right? Because like first of all, he has interesting conversations with people like guests from all over the map that do cool things. But then his line is like basically calling himself an ape. And saying that like he doesn't really know this stuff in advance. So he just asks whatever question comes to mind. Like, well, why did you do that? Or how did you think about that? Or where did this idea come from? And those questions generally mirror the same questions that the audience has in their brains. And all of a sudden you're not listening to 2 PhDs talk about some gigabrain topic that just goes way over your head, but you're listening to literally an average Joe, not quite literally, but it feels like you're listening to an average Joe just have a conversation in the same way that you would if you had the opportunity to talk to that person.
I think it's also like starting. I used to have a podcast back in 2020. That was my initial intro to content. It lasted 8 episodes, so not super long there, but I was so worried about like production. Got to make sure like it looks great. Got to make sure everything sounds really good, and that people like, it's almost like positioning myself. Like I got to sound like a good interviewer. But while I was doing that, I was asking the most face value, basic questions. There was no depth. I think if you can be present in the moment and like really think about like what is actually interesting to me. Like I think that it's almost like the school days. Like the dumb questions aren't actually that dumb. They're what everyone's thinking, but they're just too embarrassed to ask, right? So I think like I have had interviews in videos and stuff like that in the past, and I think that's the biggest thing. Just ask the questions that I want to know, no matter what. And people love talking; they love sharing as much as they can. So the more you can get out of them, the better.
So, dumb question: what is one piece of equipment that you like thought you would purchase and it would either increase your productivity or you're like, this is going to be a game changer, and then it ended up being like total waste of money?
Oh, that's actually a really good question. I don't know. I feel like I don't really buy that much gear because I don't know. Maybe I love working within my limitations or something, or I'm just too hesitant. But like, I don't know. I genuinely like. I'm looking around me at all the things I use. There really isn't that much I don't use. I feel like the thing is though, I keep things very simple. I have a camera, 2 lights, and a mic. I will say like going the exact opposite direction. Like, the mic has been the most valuable. I think it makes it sound so much more professional when you have good audio. And like, if people are listening to the videos, that's probably like the best. But what I will say is that starting out, I didn't want to make these huge investments into content because I wasn't sure if it was going to work out. So I'd cheap out, get like, instead of getting the nice camera, I'll get the mid-range camera. Instead of getting the nice mic, I'll get this $100 mic instead of the $300 one. But I think it is worth it. Like once you have that, I mean, like don't like put it all on a credit card. So like don't take it to that extreme. But like I would say like if you're gonna get the equipment, like make it right, like go all the way with it and make the investment. Because I feel like once you have that investment, like once you have that professional setup, feels like, okay, now I want to learn it. I have the tools. I trust my tools. What's missing? I need the knowledge. I need the skills, right? So I don't know. I think that's the best answer I can give.
Well, chat, turns out it's a me problem.
Yeah, Joseph, that's a you issue. You got to get off TikTok shop.
I bought some Ray-Ban Metas and I'm like, oh, dude, I'm going to film so much with this. And I have only used it a couple times and I keep forgetting. And like, there's always instances after the fact that I'm like, dang, I could have like used this, that. And then I just, yeah.
It's a first person point of view, everything. Just go live. Make it worth it.
Oh, dude, I bought the Metas. I bought the Insta360 Go, the little guy. I was like, oh, this will be perfect because it's tiny. I could take this around and film even more. Barely use that thing.
I
thought I should buy more, but apparently not. Sorry.
No, it's okay. I was just gonna say I bought the thing that makes you edit easier, where it's only one hand. I forgot the brand even, and I only used it like 2 times. I think the one that your brother gifted to you, Joseph.
Oh yeah, I've used that one time.
Yeah.
Sorry, brother.
So you guys are the ones keeping DJI in business.
Yeah, sounds like.
Yeah.
If your channel was deleted tomorrow, Ben, what would you do?
Oh wow, that's a great question. If I'm allowed to restart, I'd restart. But no, I think that's to me like the thing I've always found the most exciting about YouTube is just the ability to like get messages out there. So like to be honest, if my channel was deleted, I'd probably start again. It's something I've done like for the longest time. Like the part of the story that no one really hears, like you hear the view counts and the subs. I've been making videos since 2011. It wasn't until 2022 when my sub count exceeded 10,000. So I've tried channels. Some of them did okay. Some of them didn't do as well. But I think it's just the creating and like loving the process. So channel was deleted, restart. But also like working with clients, like I love educational content. I think it's super powerful because like we have access to information all over the internet, right? But what you do with that information is very different from person to person. So if you give people the tools to get started, like it's never been easier to start your own business, to like forge your own path, right? So not like we have to sail for 4 months to get across the ocean. We can kind of like do the things we want to do in the world. And like with the information online and giving people all across the world that power, I think that's really valuable. So really either growing my own channel or helping other people to keep growing too. Just I love the value of content.
Cool. There's still a couple more questions that were submitted. This one is from Alex with a 1. On different platforms, YouTube, Twitter, and TikTok, the same video is perceived differently. Does this mean that each case requires its own approach and style, and that the same videos cannot be shared on all 3 platforms at once? What are the main factors for creating videos specifically for Twitter?
That is a very good point. I actually don't really post anything on TikTok. I also don't post anything on Twitter. Maybe missing out. I think ultimately it is different. I think TikTok, a lot more like personable content does well. I'm going to be super honest. I'm not super well versed on Twitter. YouTube is like really where I've spent a lot of time. But yeah, I do think it is valuable to have different content strategies down the line. I think early on, focusing on one at a time. I know this goes against like some of the other advice, like the Gary Vee put out 50 pieces of content a day across all 5 platforms, no matter what. I'd say focus on one and learn that platform. Like all I've done for the last 3 years is figure out what works on YouTube. And I post those videos on Instagram and they get a fraction, like maybe 10% of the views at max, because it's just a different algorithm. What does well on Instagram is a lot more raw, unfiltered. But yeah, I think my big takeaway from that is like just start with one, and you'll kind of figure out what works there, and then you have the time, because you don't have to spend as much time figuring out what works on YouTube. If you start with YouTube, you can go to Twitter. But wish I could share more about Twitter. I've never posted a video on Twitter before ever. So
I mean, I feel like we can kind of answer to supplement that. I mean, I would say the strategies are definitely different across the platforms. However, like it's not going to hurt you to post it, like if you just are going to the bathroom and you're like, hey, I already have these videos, like let's upload them into these other platforms. It's not going to hurt by any means. And especially Twitter seems to be a bit more of a catch-all. So Twitter doesn't have the same, like it doesn't require the same strategy, I feel, as something like YouTube does or TikTok. Instagram is a little strange. But yeah, I mean, I truly feel like Twitter is much more of a catch-all, a lot more flexibility in what works and what doesn't. And oftentimes a lot of videos that go viral are literally ones that were just saved off of TikTok. So, and even with the watermarks still attached. So it's definitely a little more forgiving on Twitter. And then YouTube, I would say YouTube and TikTok to me feel like they require the most amount of intention in creating for those specific platforms.
I'll start posting on Twitter, the bathroom post.
Yeah.
Twitter's definitely a weird one. Like the algo seems to have like this main overall bucket that gets pushed to almost every user. Like there's certain memes, and they're often just like reposted TikToks that will just go so viral on Twitter that almost every, I don't know, maybe 50, 60, 70% of users are getting targeted for impressions with that content. But then beyond that, there's like these micro niches. It's very bizarre. But certainly like the catch-all content can work very well on Twitter. It's interesting because you see these very large accounts that go consistently gigaviral like almost every day. And then simultaneously you could have like a 1,000-2,000 follower account that gets 100,000 likes. I feel like the biggest parallel there is probably TikTok, but it's an interesting one on Twitter.
All right. Next question from the community. Nin77. Ben, what is the one turning point where you felt this is actually working? Was it a specific video, a mindset shift, or just consistency? That's question number one. I can ask question number 2 after.
Yeah, I think so. There's been a couple. I think like when it comes to content, when you're creating, especially around your own name, when there's people who have like group channels, there's multiple people behind it. It's a little bit different. So I think there's easier to create momentum. I feel like I've had a few, like the first initial catalyst for the channel came back in July of 2022. So I realized I'd had this channel, I'd been posting stuff, and I just needed to know what the audience wanted more of. So I decided that every day I'd post a YouTube short. And then after that, I'd start posting long form based on some of those videos. And that initial wave of like seeing what's working, seeing what people wanted more of, that was when it felt like it was really working. The next few months, it's like, okay, I know what they want. But then I realized I wanted to shift the content a little bit, go a bit broader. And there was a lot of discovery. And I think each stepping point, YouTube growth isn't linear. There's no creator out there that's just had day one, like add this many, like 10% growth every single month forever. There's going to be dips. There's going to be setbacks. So I think every time that there's something that clicks, it's like a new discovery. And I think lately was probably the biggest one, just that like content as a whole, YouTube channels, really, it's a business, right? It's not just necessarily a passion project. And treating my own YouTube channel and everyone that I work with, treating their channels like a business or a branch of their business is super valuable, because you have a strategy, you got to stick to the strategy. If you're trying to launch a product and then you push back the launch, you wait, it never gets launched. It's the same thing with a YouTube video. Let's re-edit it a little bit. Got to refine the scripting. You're like constantly in that loop. And I found myself in that loop where I wasn't putting out the content. So I think lately has been the biggest one, treating my own content like a business and really like having accountability in there, focusing on delegation. Like if I can't get 5 shorts out per week, which is my goal right now for the next 6 months, what do I need to do? What resources do I need that I don't have? Video editor. That's really what I need. Long form content, I've been struggling to get more than 1 out per month because I'm writing, filming, editing the video myself. What resources do I need to get 1 video per week? I need editing support, thumbnail support. So I think that's been the biggest takeaway. That's something that comes down the line. Say initially, really the biggest like shift or catalyst or big moment was like, I just need to put content out and see what people like. And that changed everything. It really felt like it was working and clicking. And then in the last like literally 2-3 months, just like treat this like a business. The difference is like if I need to hire someone to help me edit videos, and that's what it's going to take to get like 1 million people watching versus 100,000, that's the investment that needs to happen to get there. So I think those are the 2 biggest ones.
I didn't realize that the time is coming up here and we do have another meeting. So I want to ask one final question, which is, who would be like your dream guest to see us interview? Like if we could pull one person on here that you would like to ask questions to or something like that, like who would you want to hear from?
I mean, I could throw out the Mr. Beast, just say that, but to be a bit more real, I think someone that I've always like really found interesting to listen to for strategies and someone who's like really informed a lot of the ways I approach content is another strategist creator, Paddy Galloway. Really interesting takes on content, and specifically like working with, he works a lot with businesses like Red Bull. I find that so interesting to learn how he's been able to take a business and make it into content. So I'd say Paddy Galloway, but gotta hit you with Mr. Beast, you know.
Paddy would be a great one though. I dig that. Well, thank you so much, Ben. I hope the community, we hit 610 viewers. I'm hoping that they all got some value. Danny, you have any final things you want to say? Wrap up?
First and foremost, huge shout out to Ben and big thank you for coming on the stream this morning. I know Twitter has not been your stomping ground for the past few years, but maybe it will be going forward. I know a lot of our listeners and viewers are on Twitter. So if you're tuning in from Twitter, or if you have a Twitter, go follow Ben at BenFarYT on Twitter, and go follow him on all platforms as well. This was a huge pleasure and honor, and honestly, great learning moment for us on stage here, as well as I'm sure many others in the audience. So really appreciate the time, Ben, Jessup, and Savant, as always.
Yeah, thanks, guys. It's been a lot of fun.
Thanks for dropping by.
Thanks.
All right. See you, everybody.